And welcome to Thrift Shop Biography. This is the one about Celine Dion. Thank you for listening. Hello, Cleo.
Hello, Richard.
How are you?
Very well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks.
Good.
Because I've been reading the life and times of Celine Dion.
Yes. Turns out we've all been saying it wrong. It's Celine Dion.
Yeah, no, it's not even that, is it? It's Celine Dion.
Celine Dion.
Yeah, she says that you don't pronounce the N.
Celine Dion. And now you say where she's from.
Charlemagne.
Charlemagne. In East Montreal. I don't know how you say that.
Montreal.
We don't know what we're talking about.
I don't have the Gallic shrug. I can't do it.
Yes. Anyway, I would like to begin by saying that people have told me I look like Celine Dion my whole life. Well, all of it when she was famous anyway.
That would be weird if they came up to you and said, you look like this random French girl.
Yeah, in this village. Charlemagne.
Charlemagne. No, you do look like her a lot, actually.
Yeah, no, I've never been happy about that because I used to think she looked awful.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's just basically, you know how you don't like people who display characteristics that are like you because you're just basically being self-critical.
Oh, dear.
So if I don't like her face, it's because I don't like mine, you know what I mean? So I've had to come to terms with her face in order to come to terms with mine.
Oh, dear.
I know we look similar. I know, I accept it now.
Do you know, I know you look similar, and I've thought it. And do you know, this week when I've been online looking at her discography, one of the album covers, I actually thought, why is there a picture of Cleo on this list?
Thanks.
It looks just like you.
But then she just looks like a, oh my God, I've got to have to say it, stiff person. Right, you know, she developed stiff person syndrome.
Mm.
The first time I heard it, I laughed because I thought it was a joke because I've always thought she was a very stiff person. So I know, you know, even when she's elegant, she's just such a wooden, she never laughs, she's just so boring. And then all this book's full of is how funny and hilarious she is and how much they laugh all the time. And it's hard to comprehend this.
Oh, really? I kind of got, like, on stage, she's very serious. Because she's a balladeer.
Exactly, yeah. But in interviews she is as well.
Oh, really? No. Have you seen, like, Carpool Karaoke and things like that? She's very funny.
No. Okay.
She really knows how to send herself up.
Oh, does she?
Yeah, that's one of the things I've kind of known about. I don't know much about her or her music, but I knew that she had a pretty good sense of humour.
Oh, right, good.
But I know that that does not come across through her music or anything.
No, but she tells us a lot about how funny she is in this book.
But do you like her music, other than her face?
I forced myself to go and see her in Vegas. I was there on my own and I thought,
Oh,
I'm going to go and see Celine. And she was so unbelievably note perfect. It was like this crystal clear, incredible voice just floating through the auditorium. It was incredible. It was an amazing performance and I sort of had to come round to her a bit. I'm so glad I saw her. Yeah, what about you?
What?
Do you like her?
No.
Did you like her?
No.
No. Just plain no.
It's not that I don't like her. It's just it's really not my type of music. But that doesn't mean that I can't appreciate that she's one of the finest living vocalists.
Mm.
And actually this week I've been online and I've listened to her music critically, uncritically. What am I doing? I'm listening to her music with an open mind.
Yes.
And wow.
I know.
And something else that I never got, when you don't listen to it, when it's just on the radio, you know how she's always number one, so you can't avoid the videos and stuff.
Yeah.
And all I heard was somebody just hammering stuff out, like belting it. So I would kind of like be turned off. But this week I've actually listened to her singing some of the songs. Gosh, actually, it's quite remarkable, that voice. And what she gets out of it. And sure, she does belt the high notes and stuff, but at other times during the verses and stuff, there's a lot of colour and texture and emotion. I was really surprised, actually, and I felt like I've missed out by ignoring her all these years because the music is not my type of music. I'm not into these big ballads, really. Yeah, I've kind of discovered this week that she is a phenomenal vocalist, actually.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, that is what she is.
Anyway, should we find out how she became a phenomenal vocalist?
Let's do that.
Celine Dion. She was born in 1968, which is really surprising to me because she seems like she's been around forever, that she must be 75 by now. And to find out she was only born in 1968 she's still relatively young.
Yeah, I know. I think she looks older than she is. I tell you what, I would like to also retract my laughing at the stiff person syndrome. I now realise how serious it is and that it wasn't a joke. It was my initial reaction.
Okay.
She was born old, I feel. Do you?
Oh, she was born old. There's an interesting concept. What do you mean, like Benjamin Button?
Yes. Yeah, except she stayed old. She's grown into herself. Well, her mother had 13 kids and she was the 14th.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes, and I never knew that. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know anything about her.
No, nor did I. So she's like a Dolly Parton, a massive musical family. But this blew my mind. After 13 kids, her mother said, please, priest, please let me take contraception now. I've had 13 kids. I've done my duty to God. He said, no, it's God's will.
Yeah.
You have to let God's will happen. She was, oh, bloody hell. 6 years later, after her 13th kid, she got pregnant again. She was gutted because she was ready to go out in the world and live a life. And she got burdened with this child who turned out to be Celine Dion.
Yes, I know.
That makes me believe a little bit in the priest maybe was right.
No, I don't think that the patriarchal construct of religion over the woman's right to have autonomy over her body, I'd trade all of that to not have Celine Dion in this world.
Yeah. If everyone keeps waiting for the next kid to be Celine Dion, there'd be so many people.
I actually think just in terms of like a social experiment or whatever, just in terms of producing a talent like Celine Dion, I think it's interesting that she's not just the youngest child of 14 children. She's the youngest child after a gap of about 6 years.
Yeah.
So she's growing up in a big musical family where most of her siblings are adults almost.
Proper adults.
Yeah, her nearest siblings are like 6 and 7.
Yeah, I think there were twins that were 6.
Yeah, so she's really being nurtured by everyone, like from every single angle. It's almost like they're creating this phenomenal musician, singer type of person.
Yeah, who's used to being showered in love. She said basically she had 15 people in the house that were all looking after her.
Which I'm sure her mum was pleased about.
Yes, yeah. So if there's anyone out there who they find Celine Dion annoying, it could be from the fact that she is just so used to being loved. She may be lacking a certain amount of humility that comes from always being showered in love.
Yeah, I think
Possibly.
There's a real confidence in being, if you're the younger child and you have much older siblings, you almost have so many people looking out for you that you just have this innate sense of self-confidence as well, which she definitely has.
Yeah, and they're a really musical family. Her mum's dad was a choir director in a church, so it was all music. I mean, they're so musical.
She said that her mum played the violin and her dad played the accordion, and she said when her father plays the accordion, he is dangerously seductive. And I don't imagine the accordion as a very sexy instrument. But apparently Celine's dad was a sex god on the accordion.
Yeah.
And she also said that he was the world champion of winkers. So her dad plays the accordion and winked at her mum. And they had 14 children together. So I would say that is quite dangerously seductive if you end up with 14 children.
Uh-oh, he's getting his accordion out. Here we go again.
Maybe that, like you said, she was born old.
Yeah.
That has to have something to do with it having 13 older brothers and sisters.
That's what I mean. Yeah, because she's just surrounded by adults, and when she says she went to school, she was so bored with children.
Yeah.
So she was used to being treated like a much older person than she was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she just couldn't be doing with people her own age right from the start.
Yeah.
And her grandma had moved into the house as well. So there was 16 adults.
Well, that was after her granddad got hit by a train, which is awful.
Right. The train went right past their house. All the time, the train track was always there. And he managed to drive in front of it and got hit by the track. Right. Richard. Suicide, do you think?
No, he was just driving his car.
Yeah, but the train goes by your house. The train goes by your house every single day.
I think that's the most likely scenario that you'd get hit by a train because you're so used to it.
Oh.
They say that most accidents happen within 1 mile of your house. And I think it's the familiarity of it. And I think he was probably so used to it. One day on the way to work, he might have been a bit bleary-eyed and thought, oh, can't be bothered to wait for it. I'm going to put my foot down. Ended up dead, unfortunately. I mean, I'm completely making that scenario up.
Yeah, well, so I was making up the suicide as well.
Yeah.
Just to add some drama.
Why would he end his life by driving in front of a train?
Well, I don't know. I don't know him.
Because he was fed up. He had so many grandchildren, he couldn't bear it.
Yeah.
But the sad thing about that is that Celine's dad built that house up from scratch with his own hands, had all those children. And then, of course, because the dad got killed, the granddad got killed right outside the house, he couldn't bear to live there anymore, so he moved the whole family somewhere else.
Yeah, right.
And then Celine, at 2 years old, got hit by a car.
Yeah, I know. This is probably the most exciting thing that ever actually happened to her, apart from her musical career. Because it turned out, I mean, she was all right. Well, she had to go to hospital.
Yeah, what do you mean she was all right? She had a concussion and was rushed to hospital.
Yeah. Okay, she lived, I'll put it that way. But turns out that the bloke who'd run her down was a mobster. And a few weeks later, he was murdered and it was in the papers. And the mobster had given her brother $20 not to tell the police. And then a couple of weeks later, he was murdered anyway.
And I love that world megastar Celine Dion names and shames the man who ran her over at the age of 2 in her autobiography, Jacques Picard. Isn't he on the Starship Enterprise?
That's his brother. Jean-Luc, yeah. Totally French. You're right, they must be related.
So, Celine is growing up in a very musical household. Lots of older brothers and sisters and parents all engaged in the local music scene, all playing instruments and putting on shows. And from birth, she's being taken to concerts and gigs, and she's just basically hanging out, isn't she?
Yeah, and she's been dressed up by her sisters. They're doing her hair and makeup. They're sticking her on the kitchen table so she can sing.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's just total music. And the fact that she's the youngest is why she became famous in a way, because they were all pretty talented from the sound of it, with bands, touring. Her brother Michael had a couple of hits in the charts.
It's like that thing where they all have little modicums of success locally, and then by the time Celine comes along and all the older ones are kind of out making their way in the world, finally mum does have time. Celine's like 12, so the next youngest kids are now 16, 17.
Yes.
And now I think mum has learned little bits from every single child being musically talented, modicums of success, gigging, records in the charts, a couple of them being on TV. And I think mum is like, right, now let's focus everything we've learned so far into 12-year-old Celine, because boy, can she sing. So they started pushing Celine out as a vocalist on her own, getting local gigs and stuff. She was singing at a party at a golf course. She sung Physical by Olivia Newton-John.
Her favourite song, Unexpected.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, I imagine she's just a young girl and she likes what's in the pop charts, right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, she said, didn't she say like Olivia Newton-John, she went to see her in concert or something, so she was really, really loved her. And of course, let's not forget that a couple years before, Grease had happened, which was a phenomenon, and everyone loved John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John, didn't they?
True.
So she was singing, and there was a friend of the family called Paul, who was a manager of a rock band, said, wow, she's amazing. And they said, will you manage her? And he's like, well, I manage rock bands. I wouldn't know what to do with a 12-year-old. But anyway, he kind of reluctantly agreed to manage her for a little bit, and he got her to record a demo of some songs. But then he kind of said to the family, do you know what? She is brilliant, but I'm just not equipped to deal with this type of singer. Here's the other thing about Celine as well. She's not just brilliant, and she doesn't just have the experience and influence of all of these older brothers and sisters. Actually, what she has is about 6 or 7 different adults really pushing her and talking to their contacts and saying, come and listen to our little sister. She's brilliant. But anyway, there was the biggest French-Canadian singer up to this point was a woman called Jeanette Renaud. She had the biggest selling album in Canada at the time. And Celine's brother looked on the back and saw that she was managed by a man called René Angelil. How's my French accent?
That sounds perfect.
Okay. And so the tape that Celine had made, they sent it in to Renee, and they hadn't heard anything back. And so the mum was phoning the office, and the brother then sent him a letter and said, I know you haven't listened to my sister's tape, because if you had, you would have called us. Then after being prompted by the brother, he listened to Celine's tape and he phoned them back straight away. And he said, wow, she's brilliant. Why don't you bring her in?
Bring her in. Now, this bloke, Rene, well, he was actually quite famous in Canada. He was actually very famous in Canada. He'd basically been part of the Canadian Beatles called the Baronets. I did look them up. They look fantastic. And his wife was Anne Rene, who was a well-known singer and TV host. So they really were like proper showbiz royalty in Canada, it seems to me. Yeah, so it's like they were really going to the top because he was the manager of that Jeanette Renault, who had just left him. And he was really humiliated and upset because he'd given her his all and she'd left him to go higher. That was a mistake.
Yeah, who'd ever heard of Jeanette Renault?
Never heard of her.
No, but there was another 12-year-old French girl who could really sing. And so Renee was a bit like, oh, we don't really need another one. That niche is already taken at the moment in French Canada.
Exactly, until he met her. And she sang and made him cry. And as she said, as soon as she saw him cry, she knew she had him, as it were.
Yeah. So then he said, great, let's do something with this. But he wanted her to re-record the demos that she'd done with the previous guy. So they went into the studio with her and they re-recorded. But also he said, you need some songs that are your own. And so he knew this songwriter called Eddie Marnay, who he brought and introduced to Celine. And he got to know her.
He was in his 60s, this man.
Yes. And
he'd also had a big career with in the 60s and stuff. He was kind of like one of those legendary songwriters for Motown. He was like one of those up in that echelon.
Yeah, and he came and he met 12-year-old Celine, and they spent a lot of time together, and they seemed to really bond. And I felt it quite unusual that Celine started this very intense friendship with this 60-year-old songwriter guy. But he said that he needed to really get to know her because he needed to write songs from her perspective.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, she really embraced that friendship, and she said they would sit and talk for hours, and she was just really taken with this older man. But he ended up writing some really good songs for her, which basically got the ball rolling.
Yeah. And he really understood her. So he was like a poet or something, I suppose.
She really likes older men, doesn't she?
Yeah, she was 12, nearly 13. But that is such a massive age gap, that is.
Yeah, but also, like you were saying, she didn't like school because she didn't relate to any children. You already said she was an old soul and she had all these older brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's not so unusual that she would make very good friends with an older man.
Yeah, it was a really close confidant for her. Confidant.
And also, do you know what? She seems to like it when people big her up and compliment her.
Yeah.
Like if people tell her she's really good, she's in there. She loves it. She can't get enough of it.
Yes.
So, Renee is saying that to her, and now this really experienced songwriter is saying, Celine, you've got one of the best voices I've ever heard. Of course she's going to like him.
Yes, that's true.
So they make some songs together, and they make a cassette, and they start sending it out to people. And there's a guy in Quebec who has the biggest rating talk show. His name is Michel Jasmin, and he loved it. So she ended up on this TV show, the highest rated TV show in Quebec, and she sang and 1 million people watched her.
Yeah. It's interesting reading this book, not really understanding the major sort of separations of different parts of Canada. It's been quite educational in that way. Quebec, love her. She's like their daughter. And you sort of finding out all these political things about Canada and the different sections, and sometimes whole sections have never heard of her, but this section has, and then there's the French speaking versus the English speaking and all the political aspects of that, and she was trying to cross over both, and then some got upset because she's singing in English, but she's saying I'm French, and it's all stirs it all, and I didn't know all of this stuff about Canada, and now I do.
There's two if you're a singer, there's two very distinct markets in Canada, and it's French language and English language. And actually, you can be very famous in one, i.e. French language Canada, and nobody in English-speaking Canada has a clue who you are.
Oh, exactly.
So at the moment, little Celine is up and coming in French Canada.
But then the next thing to try and hit is France in the whole French-speaking world. That's their next aim, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's actually amazing. It's that thing of this is art with business. because obviously Renee's the business, she's the art, but she's quite into the business side of it. I mean, she just does her job, but how much they push her is unbelievable. So at 13, she's already doing national anthems at baseball stadiums, Olympic stadiums. They're really pushing her in that way. So she's becoming a little bit of a child star. And then they send her to Paris.
And she's recorded 2 albums straight away.
Yeah, she has. Yeah, so one of the songs they wrote for her gets chosen to represent France in a Japanese international competition in Tokyo, which I guess is a bit like the Eurovision Song Contest, but Japanese.
What, like the Japanese Song Contest?
Yes. All we know is the Eurovision Song Contest.
Yeah.
I have also found out through this book that there are many song contests around the world.
Yes.
Which I didn't know about. So, yeah. Oh, my God. Look, for anybody who's also concerned about the developing relationship with the much older man who's about 38, twice married, 2 lots of kids, and this 13-year-old kid, the things she starts saying about her feeling this attraction towards her manager, Renee, they start here. They start at 13.
Yeah.
She actually says, he whispers in her ear, "You'll win, it'll change our life." And she felt his breath on her face, and she felt this incredible intimacy. And she says, "Our life, our life."
Yeah.
And then after it, when she won it, he says, "Are you all right?" And she sings, "Are You Lonesome Tonight?" to him. And she's like completely in love with him already at 13. And she's at pains to make sure that we know that he did not encourage it. And I don't think he did. But
it's weird.
You don't know the effect you're having on somebody like her. You don't know.
When I first started reading it, and she's 13 years old talking about this intense attraction to this much older man, I kind of think, okay, she's backtracking here and she's making it seem like just for PR reasons that it was totally her and he was oblivious to it. But the more I read the book, I totally believe her that it was a crush at this point.
Oh, it's absolute.
It was a crush on her manager.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that she wasn't going to school, so she wasn't forming relationships and crushes on boys her own age. And actually, when she was with this older songwriter, and he was, spending time with her so he could write songs from her perspective, he would ask her, well, how do you feel about boys your age? So he could write songs about her falling in love with boys her own age. And she says, I have no experience of that. And she wanted it so badly.
Yeah, she did.
She was like, I feel so lonely because there's no one for me to even fall in love with.
No.
And I think it's that thing that we've already discussed about her having much older brothers and sisters. She never went to school. She was surrounded by adults. The guy who was outside of her family, who was paying her the most attention and actually was being very caring and nurturing for her, was her manager. So I kind of think it's actually quite obvious that she would develop a crush on him.
Yeah, I'll tell you what else is, compared to her best friend, who's this man in his 60s, he must seem quite young. But also, he's very charismatic, he's famous, he's powerful. He's actually gorgeous.
Well, she said that one of the first things she says when he first comes into their lives is that her mum and her older sisters all really fancied him.
Yeah.
So she noticed that.
Yes.
So there's also that aspect to it as well.
Nah, he is just gorgeous. If you look at him younger, I think he's gorgeous his whole life.
But anyway, she's got a crush on him, and I think he's oblivious to it at this moment in time because he's married and he has kids.
Yeah, I do think he's oblivious. Yes, I really do.
And she is a 13-year-old.
Yeah, I don't think he sees her that way in any way. I must add, I had crushes on 2 characters who were about the same age gap when I was her age, but they weren't real people. They were fictional characters.
Were they fictional Belgian detectives?
Yes.
With heads shaped like an egg?
That's absolutely correct.
Poirot.
But as I've got older, that hasn't gone away. I haven't gone, what a silly fool I was. I totally get that. I think they're really gorgeous people.
Who was the other one?
Sherlock Holmes.
So they were both detectives?
Both detectives, both amazing brains, much older. And as I've got older, they've got younger. And I would still follow that up if that was a real thing. So I actually completely get it. I totally get it. I have to say, of all people, I get it. Carry on.
So, after her huge success at the song contest in Japan, she came back to Montreal and there were actually fans waiting at the airport and TV cameras, newspapers. And so she's kind of, has been this little child star in French Canada. And then she goes to Tokyo, wins a competition. She comes back and her fame is growing in her home country. And then they take her back to Paris. So, of course, obviously, because in French Canada, they speak French.
Yeah.
So the obvious other territory is France itself and French-speaking Europe. And so when she's going to Paris, she's recording more songs and she's getting on TV. So actually, in the French-speaking parts of Europe, she's getting to number 1 in the charts. And at the age of 15, she has platinum records all over Europe. Well, not in England, obviously, because we don't speak French. But anywhere that they speak French, she's becoming very popular. And in that market, the French-speaking market in Canada and Europe, she's actually very successful by the age of 15.
Yeah, true. And then there's all things like many different shows over her life where René has just pushed and pushed for her to get on things.
He's a very good manager, I have to say.
He's really good. This is a love story, actually. Her life is a hard-working love story.
I really got it. And do you know what, like you said, that she's interested in the business thing. And the thing that made this book interesting to me was reading about the brilliant management decisions that René would make. And the only reason we know so much about it in this book is because she was so close to him.
Yeah.
And she was watching everything he did. Even at the age of 15, 16, there's a revelation in this book at the age of 16 where she says, I realise now that I'm actually deeply in love with René. I think her mum is noticing, because of course, because she's young, her mum is chaperoning her everywhere. So there's actually quite a threesome of Celine, her mum, and René when they tour internationally. And every night in the hotel before they go to bed, René will kiss Celine's mum on both cheeks and then Celine on both cheeks. And at the age of like 16, it's turning into something different for Celine.
For her.
Yeah, she goes to bed with her cheeks tingling. Oh, she sleeps with a photograph of him.
Yeah, right. And then she says one morning she woke up and the photo had managed to work its way on top of the pillow and her mum must have seen it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, she's really obsessed.
Yeah, she is.
But she says as well that she actually was friends with René's wife at first.
Yeah, of course.
But then she gradually disappeared off the scene, which she was really glad about because she couldn't hide her love. I mean, it does seem like everybody saw it. And then eventually the press saw it.
Yeah, Celine said that if René was in the room, she didn't have eyes for anyone else and she just lit up. Yeah, I imagine it would be really quite obvious.
Yeah.
When you're in love, you think you're being discreet, but I think there are things you just can't hide.
No.
The way you act around someone.
Exactly. And then when the rumours started to hit the press, that's when he said, right, we've got to stay apart. I can't sit next to you. We can't do this. And she was absolutely gutted. Also, his wife had started, I don't know, his wife had said, I'm going to leave you. But it was partly, I don't know if it was just about that crush, because that wouldn't be enough. But it was the fact that he was putting everything he had in his life towards Celine's career. He'd remortgaged the house. He was giving her all of his time, all of his attention. But he also had a massive gambling habit. So he was either out gambling or running around after his young ingenue, which is going to basically mean he's not at home. He's not there for his kids. So his wife divorces him.
Yeah, his wife felt incredibly neglected.
Well, she was.
Yeah, he literally, I mean, René had remortgaged his house and he actually ended up bankrupt at one point. Celine didn't know this. Celine, at the age of 17, was reaping the rewards of her success. She'd bought a house. She was staying in nice hotels. She was getting driven everywhere. What she didn't realize is that René, at that point, had already bankrupted himself and then remortgaged his house. Yeah, I imagine that his wife felt very insecure and neglected. I'm not surprised she left him.
I'm not either. I'm not. But yeah, they obviously had young kids. I think they were 8 and 11 at that time. So
yeah,
he really tried to go back to his wife, but he was already off on this road. I really actually do think he was obsessed because he wanted to make a success of this business venture.
Yeah, no, I get that.
That's how he saw it.
Yeah. He wanted to make Celine the biggest singer in the world, and he was very determined to do it. Well, he did.
He did it. He actually, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And that really was his goal. That's all his goal was. I don't doubt that at all.
So when René's wife left him, rumours started about Celine and René, and then when they were out one night, he didn't sit next to her in the restaurant, and she said she felt so sick, and then he said to her afterwards, can we go out for a walk? And he said to her, we can't spend any more time together because people are saying that I'm in a relationship with you and it's very inappropriate. So he kind of broke her heart, like he'd realized that she had this massive crush on him. And he told her at the age of 18 that this can't happen. And then when she got back to the hotel room where her mum was, her mum had run a bath and she put her in the bath and Celine just broke down crying. And she's like, oh, it's like my mum knew this was going to happen. And then she found out that her mum had written Renee a letter saying, my daughter is in love with you. You need to do something about this. So they had the conversation. And then he said to her, do you know what? It's time for us all to have a break.
We need a break. We need to totally reset you. You've already become a child star. You've won all these awards. Everything's great to a certain extent. They fixed her teeth, shaved off her Dracula fangs, which she hated. Got her hair redone. Got her singing lessons, dancing lessons. She's got a whole new wardrobe. Really hardcore studied English, the English language.
Yeah, so up until this point in her life, everything that we've read and talked about has totally been in French. She couldn't talk it. It's weird to think that. So everything up until this point in her life, up to the age of 18, was in French. And then she took hardcore English lessons.
Yes.
And then, and she became a very sexy lady as well.
And she said, okay, I'm going to really make this work. I'm going to work so hard on this break. She's going to turn into a young woman and she's going to have sex appeal. And her whole mission is to seduce this man. That was her goal. And she works, so everything she does, she works hard at. She worked really hard at all of that. And she said the first time when he came round to the house and she opened the door in a little mini skirt and a crop top, he was flustered. And that's when she knew she got him. She felt this confidence of power over this man. I mean, she absolutely seduced this man. He didn't have a choice. Yeah.
She went for it.
Yeah. They all thought that she would eventually meet someone her own age and just get over it. So now she's this sex bomb seducer.
So she's with CBS. This is one of the things where I think Renee is so switched on as a manager.
He really is.
He knows to turn her in to the worldwide diva, she's got to start singing in English. In terms of being a French language singer, she's basically as big as you can get.
Yes.
She's selling millions of records in the French language. And in fact, one of her albums, I think it's Dieu, remains the biggest selling French language album of all time.
Amazing.
And Renee says to CBS, right, if the next album does the business and sells 100,000 copies, you've got to give us the budget to record an album in the English language. And it does. He was so proud of coming up with that clause in the contract. And when I read that, it's just like, God, this guy knows what he's doing.
He really does. He's brilliant. Right, the next thing that happens, it's 1988. She is 19 years old. She won the Eurovision Song Contest, right?
Yeah, did you know that?
No. No! I had no clue. Everyone talks about ABBA winning the Eurovision Song Contest. Or Cliff Richard. Nobody mentions Celine Dion. How is nobody talking about that? It's weird.
Yeah, it's really weird, actually, that she did that and you don't know.
No, I know, not only that, I did actually watch the sort of countdown to the points on YouTube, and Britain were nearly going to win. And then by 1 point, some country voted her to win. So almost more surprising is that Britain nearly won, because we have long since been absolute total losers of Eurovision. Yeah, and so that's the night she managed to get her man.
Yeah.
Because everyone was so happy, and she was happy, and she just looked at him. He said, if you really want this, I'll be your first. And she went, you'll be my first and only. And that's the romantic beginning of their love life. So she was 19. It's all perfectly legal and above board.
So what is he? He's 26 years older than her. So what is he at this point? He's 40.
Really old. Do you know what, though? They love each other and they were amazing. And everyone seemed to get behind it. Was like, how many years was it before it came out? 4 or 6?
Oh, yeah. They did not release that news to the public, even though the press was speculating about it forever.
Yeah, so maybe it did need the long wait. She's furious that he made her wait so long before revealing it, like years. That also meant she couldn't be honest with the media. She had to lie to every single interview. That might make her come across as a bit stiff.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it?
she's hiding the truth.
Yeah.
And you can tell, you just know. So they're like, have you got a boyfriend? No, and everyone suspects. And she just can't actually be her true self. So that must have been really awkward.
So now the French language album sold a lot of copies. So CBS is allowing them they send her to America to start recording her English language album. And she's working with David Foster, which was a real coup because he'd been working with Barbra Streisand and sold millions of records. And actually they said, we can't just make that happen. You have to go and court him. And then they invited him to watch Celine sing, and he was like, oh yeah, no, great, fantastic, I'll work with you.
Yeah.
So she got to record her first English language album in America with a really respected and famed producer. So things are going really well, and she's 20 years old, but the album comes out and it sells okay in Canada and also in English speaking Canada, but it doesn't do the massive launch that they were expecting. And so the USA actually hold back releasing Celine's first English language album, which is very frustrating. But then by a huge twist of fate, Sony hold their annual conference in Quebec. And Celine is there, obviously. And Renee said to them...
He fought to get her a slot there. She says that that's just an example of how charming Rene is, because he charms people and he's got so many contacts in the music business. And he gets her a 9:30 a.m. breakfast slot to sing to all these poor Sony people at a convention who are just trying to have breakfast, probably hungover.
Yes, yes.
And she sings them over breakfast. She finishes the song, there's silence. And then, oh my God, and there's a massive thunderous standing ovation in the breakfast room. And the next day they're like, right, we're releasing your album, we're going to get a massive publicity campaign, you are off. And that's how she takes off.
Yeah, they threw all the money at it because she knocked their socks off.
She did.
There is this running theme in this book, actually. Whatever she does, this song contest in Tokyo, the Eurovision Song Contest, and at other points where he gets her to sing at industry conferences, he says to her, he says, you need to go out there and blow everybody's heads off. He says, otherwise we're back to square one. Every time she went out to sing, he said to her, if you don't do well, it's over for us.
Yeah.
So he really raised the stakes so high. She went out there and she did it every single time.
Yeah, she did. But it's actually true, because when you actually follow this, every single step that he said that was a massive stepping stone to the next level. Every time.
Yeah.
It pushed her up miles. And it takes two determined people. This is actually why they're so good together, because both of them had a steely determination to win. Both. If only one or the other, they're not pushing each other. They both want it.
Yeah.
Really badly. And that's what makes her voice so good, because she will work her ass off to be the best.
So with Sony's backing, obviously, she's getting lots of publicity in America. Did you watch her performance on The Tonight Show, which is her first American TV program? Oh, my God, it's amazing. Of course, because she is amazing.
Is that Where Does My Heart Beat Now?
Yeah,
is it that song?
Yeah, that's the first song that brought Celine to my attention all those years
ago. Me too. They say that they go past the LA Tower Records, and in the window it says, you will remember this name, Celine Dion. And in the window is also George Michael, New Kids on the Block, and Celine Dion. They're the three big things. Yeah. So that just gives it a real time slot to me. That's how long she's been around.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It is amazing.
We're right now in the year of the Olympics, where she's just done the closing ceremony of the Olympics against all odds because of her health battles. Mm-hmm. So she's still absolutely on top.
Yes.
All these years later.
She's a living legend.
She actually is.
So now she's exploded in America, which is an amazing step up for her career and their quest for worldwide domination. And she goes back, she's got this massive tour in Canada, and she starts singing, and she says her voice tears like wet paper, which has never happened before. And so she goes to see a voice doctor, and he says to her, you can either have an operation right now, or you cannot talk for 3 weeks, like not a single sound. And so she chooses not to talk, and she has complete voice rest.
Yeah.
She then goes to see a voice specialist, a voice teacher, who starts working with her voice. And he says, you need to do these exercises every day, but you will not notice a benefit for 5 years. And do you know what? She very diligently does it.
She does it.
To the point where she kind of does do these exercises every day, but almost forgets about them. Because he says to her, you need to do these exercises, but when you get on stage, don't think about them, just sing. Because your voice is just going to be naturally developing.
Yes.
And 5 years later, this man was absolutely right. Her voice just became something else.
There's a few times when her voice goes, and every time they're so hard on her. They say, they change the way she breathes, the way she walks, the way she stands, even the way she sits down. It's like marine training. And she said when she was young, her hero was a gymnast, an Olympic gymnast, and she sees herself as an Olympian singer, and she's training to win gold all the time. And then, weeks of silence, she's on a strict diet. And then the next time she goes, they'll say, oh, were you out shopping? Well, you've picked up dust from the air. You shouldn't be out. So she becomes more and more reclusive over her whole life, because that's how much she dedicates to being the perfect voice.
But you know what? She has really worked at her voice her whole career. She's at the top of her game because even when she was selling millions of records and singing at the Oscars, even probably before she did the Olympics this year, she's having constant vocal coaching and training. She is treating her voice as if she was a gymnast, an athlete at the top of her game. She takes it very, very seriously. So she's taking off in America, and she does the soundtrack song to Beauty and the Beast with Peabo Bryson, which means she gets to sing at the Oscars. So she's totally really breaking through in America now, in the English-speaking market.
Yeah.
And then she gets the support slot with Michael Bolton, which when you think about it, that's the perfect audience for her, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Because so many of her other tours have been so wronged. Like she was paired with a punk band or a really rude comedian, it's like, but all those things
also,
train you though, don't they?
Yes, there you go. When I read, I think, why on earth is Rene putting her on these bills with punk bands? It's kind of like, he says, well, there's no wasted gig because you will learn to sing for any type of audience.
Exactly. And like, how do I get their attention? I've got to work so much harder to get their attention.
And she would do it, wouldn't she?
She would, yeah. She could win anyone over.
Because she has an amazing voice. Yeah, she has an amazing voice.
Yeah, and she puts like 100% concentration into it. Like, she's out to win.
Do you know what? There's one thing that I watched this week, and I remember it from 20 years ago, because like I said, Celine is really known for belting out these big ballads. Now, about 20 years ago, there was a Beatles cover album recorded at Abbey Road with George Martin, who was the Beatles producer. And
yes, I remember that, yeah.
Celine Dion comes on and sings Here, There and Everywhere. And she naturally stood there in the studio and started belting it out. And George Martin said to her, no, we're not doing that. He said, Celine, everybody knows you can belt songs out. Everybody knows you have this amazing big voice. He says, I want you to think about every single word, and I don't want you to belt it. And what I listened to it this week is actually beautiful, and she conveys so much emotion, and she tells such a story, because he said to her, rein it in and just focus on each word. And it's really beautiful, like to the point where I think she's one of the most accomplished, expressive vocalists of our age.
Oh,
yeah, she's amazing. And she is that,
yeah,
because not only does she do all of this technical, physical work on her voice, and she understands how the voice works, but actually she's also listening to voice teachers, producers, where they kind of direct her in a way. She's not, what we say, she's very confident, but she's not big-headed she's not so conceited that she won't listen to advice from other people. Yeah, she's so open to everything, and it really shows in her voice.
Yeah. I really like the story of how they recorded All By Myself, because they had a stupid argument that morning, her and Rene. So he said, right, go on your own then. So she went on her own. She now realises that was a scam, because she was really annoyed and on her own. And then David Foster wound her up and said, well, if you're not up to it, hitting that high note, then I'll just get someone else to sing it. So she was really angry and all by herself. And so she sang it with massive anger and then stormed out of the studio. And that's the version they use. It's the only one, but she absolutely nailed it.
Yeah, Whitney Houston was recording next door, and the producer said to her, oh, if you can't do it, I'll get Whitney in to do it.
Yeah. And also the Titanic theme, which they got her to do, she recorded a demo to try and persuade James Cameron to have it in the film, because he didn't want a song. And he, of course, listened to it and loved it. They kept that demo. That was her first and only take.
Yes.
They didn't even get to re-record it because it was perfect first time.
Isn't that amazing?
She's that good.
Yeah.
There's so many songs where some of them I sort of forget were her, but there's so many songs. If they came on the radio, you'd be singing along. You just would.
Yeah, it's interesting, actually, because there's me saying, oh, I never really listened to Celine Dion. And today when I got stuck in the YouTube loop about her, that song, It's All Coming Back to Me Now, which is like a rock opera. I mean, that's
yeah,
amazing.
It all came back to you, did it?
It all came back to me, how much I actually love Celine Dion. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's so many great songs. Loads.
And what's interesting as well, you know what? She never turned her back on her French audience, because you're right, there was, when she started singing in English, there was a bit of a backlash all those years ago. But what I didn't realise is that when she had her massive international English language success, she would always record her French speaking albums as well.
Yes,
so she
had the
quite
two
often
careers
she was
running
doing
alongside.
2 albums, yeah, and she would
And
have
two
to do
lots
the
of
publicity
promotion.
for both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So she really worked hard, didn't she? She really deserves all of that success.
She
and
does.
she had this brilliant manager.
Yeah, and total love of her life.
Yeah.
Oh my God, the wedding, right? Their wedding. By the time it all came out, and they got this loads of love and support. But it was actually, she doesn't even mention this. She goes on and on about this preposterous wedding dress she had designed.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was actually televised on Canadian TV, which she doesn't mention.
Wow.
So it was kind of like the royal wedding. It was like a royal wedding. I guess they were royalty of Canada at that point.
Yeah, of course.
Live on TV. And because I Googled it, because I wanted to see a wedding dress, and there's loads of pictures of her doing interviews in her wedding dress. I was like, what's going on here? What are you doing? So yeah, that's how popular and huge they are in Canada. Because I didn't even know about that.
You know, we only really got to know Celine in like the mid-90s, really. So she begun to exist for us then. But actually for French Canada, they've known her since she was 12 years old.
Yeah, she was a kid star.
And they've watched that 12-year-old local girl become a worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I see how, you know, it's a bit absurd to us that her wedding was televised, but actually, you know, where she's from, she's probably the most famous person ever.
Yeah, that's true. They've got Bieber now. Justin.
No, but he's not French Canadian, is he?
Oh.
Is he?
Just Canadian.
Yeah, just Canadian.
And it's very, very rare for English-speaking countries to accept any foreign person because we're so backwards in that way.
Do you know what I like about Celine when I've been listening to her this week is actually how she does pronounce words a bit differently when she sings.
Yeah, true.
She has her own definite sound. She has different vowel sounds.
She does. We should also mention there's lots of stuff about illness in here and looking after Renee and all the love and the cancer and all sorts of stuff. And we all know that Renee died a few years ago and she's really struggled.
Yeah.
And then she struggled with illness and she has 3 boys. I think they're all boys. I think she had 1 boy and then twins. I remember this at the concert in Vegas that she had a section where she showed a lot of slides of her family and actually stood out and chatted to the audience. And I remember thinking, this sounds so trotted out. Like you've said this so many times. You know, you're really struggling to make it sound fresh, I thought. And she said, look, here's my husband with our kids. And I thought, bloody hell, he looks so knackered. He just looks so tired. Everyone else is smiling. I thought, that I didn't know anything about them at that point. I just thought he looks tired. But then you would if it's on your 3rd wife, who's so much younger, and your 3rd load of kids. You're probably a bit tired out by that.
What's amazing about him being tired out and being that age, actually, as much as Celine achieved her dream, Renee realised all of his dreams as well.
He totally did, yes.
Because he wanted to make her the biggest singer in the world, and actually he did. He fulfilled what he wanted out of life. That's amazing.
Yeah, I'll tell you what else he wangled. He absolutely loved gambling and he managed to get his wife to do a massive residency in Vegas. So imagine how good that was for him. Yeah. I mean, for years. She was in and out of Vegas for years.
So whereas his first wife threatened to leave him because of his gambling, actually Celine was the best wife. He was able to live and stay in Las Vegas for a long, long time. Plus also, that's the most successful Las Vegas residency in history, which meant he had endless money to waste in the casinos.
Exactly. He hit the jackpot.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Thrift Shop Biography. We love making this podcast and we're absolutely thrilled that so many of you are already listening. You could really help us out by leaving us a review somewhere, wherever you listen to this podcast. And if you could share us, tell your friends about us, or drop some links on social media. We have a Facebook page called Thrift Shop Biography, so make sure you come over there to hear about the episodes first and what else we're up to. Okay, see you next week. And if you're new here, there are loads more episodes now to go and listen in the back catalogue, so make sure you go and enjoy them. Okay, thank you very much.